I'm going to be looking at two travel trailer toy haulers that are very differently built. They're both from small, like very niche independent manufacturers, but they've picked like almost opposite components on everything. Frames, steel versus aluminum, metal versus wood cabinets, wet bath versus dry bath. And one of them even has my favorite AC, which you pretty much never see on new RVs. If you're new here, my name is Jacob. I'm an RV tech and I go undercover at dealerships to review RVs and tell you what's quality and what's hype. In today's video, I'll talk about what's actually better and what is just marketing gimmicks. We're going to be comparing and contrasting a 2021 manufacturer Genesis Supreme Vortex 2114LE with a 2024 manufacturer ATC brand. This is their PLA 450 2011 model. Now, the ATC is almost 25 feet long versus the Genesis Supreme at 21 feet, so they're not a perfect comparison. But neither of these RVs have slide outs, which is why I think they're still fairly comparable. The only thing that's really the same between these two is the water heater. They both chose a Suburban brand tank type water heater. I give this quality-wise a 10 out of 10 for both. Next, let's talk about the roof material on these RVs. And this is where we wildly diverge. The Genesis Supreme has a standard membrane type roof, which I give it a 10 out of 10 on quality, assuming there's no factory defects like bubbles. I have a free Don't Buy a Lemon guide that you can get on my website that covers roof bubbles and other things you should be checking on an RV to avoid lemons. Now the ATC, on the other hand, has an aluminum skin roof. An aluminum roof is my favorite in the sense that it is the most resistant to damage. I score the aluminum roof 10 out of 10 points. Next, let's look at the refrigerators. The Genesis has a pretty typical gas absorption refrigerator, which it's really great for boondocking because it doesn't require as much electricity as a 12 volt. Some people don't really like gas absorption because you can break them if you use them incorrectly. This is a topic covered in my tool-free RV maintenance course, which I'll put a link below in the description if you want to check that out. The ATC, on the other hand, has a more modern 12 volt refrigerator. It's this Furrion brand dual hinge design, which some people complain about because sometimes they don't close correctly and you go to open it up and the door falls off. But slam the door and should be fine. In my experience, 12 volt refrigerators, like the electronics in them are prone to going bad and needing replacement, and they're terribly expensive. It's like $1,500 for a little 12 volt refrigerator, which is kind of ridiculous when you can buy a similar sized residential type refrigerator for like $500. I give this refrigerator 6 out of 10 points. Next, let's talk about the cabinets in these two RVs. And once again, way different choice of materials. The Genesis has typical RV cabinets, which is a lumber core material wrapped in vinyl. I found in the bathroom there is already some water damage just from water splashing on the floor. This is what it looks like when water starts to swell up the MDF that's under the vinyl wrap. I give these cabinets a 5 out of 10 rating. The ATC, on the other hand, is kind of weird. The cabinets are solid aluminum and the drawers are solid aluminum. The thing I didn't like about these is that the latches on them were not smooth at all. I was struggling to close a cabinet after I'd opened it. The salesman was like, yeah, you have to slam them. Like they're built to be slammed. I was having to slam these things hard enough. I was concerned about the plastic latches breaking. I give these a 10 out of 10 because the cabinets are not going to swell up from water damage, and the door latches, if they do break, are going to be easy to replace. The thing that's like extremely expensive, the cabinets in the Genesis, it's very expensive to have all of that cabinet pulled out and replaced. Next, let's talk about the countertop selections for these RVs. The Genesis once again disappointed me with their selection of thermofoil counters for both the kitchen and the bath. ATC used solid surface in both the kitchen and the bath, which is far better quality of construction. I give the Genesis 2 out of 10 points and the ATC 10 out of 10 points. Next, let's talk about the air conditioners in these RVs. And one has my absolute favorite and one has my absolute least favorite. If you're not familiar with my least favorite air conditioner, it's General Electric. This GE air conditioner is in the ATC toy hauler. If you go and look at General Electric's own website where they sell these, many people are complaining about having to replace them because they lost their refrigerant, like sometimes 3 or 4 times within the 2-year warranty period. And in the Genesis Supreme, we have a Advent brand air conditioner. In addition to being top quality as far as their reliability, Advent is also one of the cheapest air conditioners conditioners on the market. The interesting thing is that as much as I like Advent, no RV manufacturers use them except apparently Genesis Supreme. I have installed a ton of Advent air conditioners. Hashtag not sponsored, as always. I give 10 out of 10 points for the Advent, but 5 out of 10 points for the GE. Next, I'm going to talk about the frames on these two RVs, which honestly might be the most interesting comparison between them. But first, if you're shopping RVs and you want to be able to easily compare and contrast two RVs, like I'm doing in today's video, you should check out my RV shopping course. Not only does it include the app, which you see me using to grade today's RVs, but it includes a database of over 500 RVs, all searchable, sortable. So let's talk about the frames on these two RVs. The Genesis has the pretty classic mass-manufactured Lippert frame, while ATC actually has their own in-house manufactured aluminum frame. The Genesis Supreme has a cargo capacity of over 4,000 pounds, while the ATC, while it's a bigger RV, it only has a cargo capacity of 2,700 pounds. Like, depending on what you're wanting to haul in these things, that actually might be a deal breaker. So is their custom aluminum frame better? I would say in ways, yes. It's not going to rust the way that steel does. They seem to be solidly built. So next, let's talk about the plumbing on these two RVs. And this was honestly really disappointing. At the end of this video, I'm going to link a video that explains in more detail the plumbing problem that's plaguing the RV industry. When I looked at the Genesis Supreme, everything I saw appeared to be good plumbing. Now granted, I wasn't able to explore too deeply because I was babysitting a salesman. So if you're aware of something that I don't know about Genesis, shoot me an email. I'd love to see some photos, but assuming it has good plumbing like I saw, then I would give this a 10 out of 10. ATC, on the other hand, not only was I able to identify bad plumbing in it, but I've also heard many complaints about bad plumbing and leaks being caused in very, very new ATCs. In addition to the classic like stainless pinch clamp on vinyl braided tubing problem, I know that ATC has used what's called a PEX lock connector. PEX lock is this black plastic clamp in place of a stainless pinch clamp, but they're using the same flexible tubing, and the fitting is also designed for PEX tubing. While I haven't personally had to repair any of these, I have had many of my viewers tell me that this type of connection in their ATC has caused leaks. I would still give both of these attachment styles a 0 out of 10 for bad plumbing. Next, we're going to talk about the fit and finish, and then some really questionable design choices. On the Genesis, we have the water damage issue on the cabinets in the bathroom. I also spotted a hole in the decking in the garage compartment from wood rot from underneath. Now, granted, this is a used unit. On this particular one, I have to give it a 6 out of 10. If you were looking at a new unit, I would expect the fit and finish would be much better. On the ATC, everything looked really good fit and finish wise. I would give it a 10 out of 10. There are some design choices that are still lacking with ATC. Another viewer sent me pictures of his ATC toy hauler where the water heater was built on a shelf. The aluminum frame was bending under the weight of the water heater just bouncing down the road. And that brings me to another design choice that's just kind of weird for ATC. They decided to put a wet bath in their RV. Wet bath, if you're unfamiliar with the difference, is where the toilet and sink are essentially inside of the shower compartment versus having a toilet and sink and then a shower next to it that's isolated. That would be called a dry bath. The Genesis has a dry bath. The ATC has a wet bath. Apparently when they first made this wet bath configuration, the large, like fantastic vent, roof vent, didn't have anywhere to pull air into the bathroom. So it was creating negative pressure, like pulling a vacuum on the bathroom because there was no airflow. So ATC decided to drill a hole in the wall and put a tiny 2-inch vent that's supposed to let in enough air, but they also put that vent up at the top, not at the bottom, so it's only moving air across the top, not through the bathroom. There's some weird things going on there. So the total score for this Genesis Supreme was 87 points. While this Genesis Supreme is used, if you wanted to buy a comparable one new, average retail would be about $32,000. Generally speaking, it had like better appliances, but worse bones in the RV. Compare this with the ATC that scored 81 points. The ATC is like really good bones and then some like lesser appliance choices. If it had actually gotten a 10 in the plumbing category, it would have been a 91, not an 81. Unfortunately, because it's badly plumbed and you can expect leaks, I have to give this ATC an F grade. As far as retail price on the ATC, average retail is $48,000. It's a bit more than the Genesis Supreme, but you have to remember it's about 4 feet longer, like they're not entirely comparable. I feel like on these toy haulers, there's a lot of competing pros and cons. I would love to know your opinion. Which one do you think is a better RV? Click here if you want to see my video playlist explaining the plumbing problem, what it is and how to fix it, or click here if you want to see more of my undercover reviews of travel trailers.